Hornet from Hollow Knight Silksong finally joins Super Smash Bros. Isn't that wild? She's a quick and nimble fighter with many long-ranged attacks that combo into each other. As a hunter, she thrives on being able to quickly dodge attacks and reset the tempo to fit her situation. But how does she do this? Well, she has a lot of tricks up her sleeve, but be warned, there are spoilers for all of Silksong in this video. For instance, she wields the Needle. This sword packs quite a punch and keeps all the enemies at bay. She uses this needle for most of her regular attacks. The jab combo might look a little familiar to those who have played Silksong. This is directly lifted from the Hunter's Crest in that game. This is the primary inspiration for some of her attacks, like her dash attack, up tilt, neutral aerial, and up air. Her downward aerial is interesting in the context of Smash as well. There's already a precedent for plummeting aerials in this series, like with Banjo-Kazooie, Richter, and Toon Link. Hornet's would not be like that. Her dive attack is a sharp dash diagonally downwards, but it quickly brings her back into control. In addition, if it connects, it restores one of her jumps. If she hasn't already used her mid-air jump, this does not give her another one though. I think that'd be a little too broken. That said, I'm not making it so she's exactly 1-to-1 with her Hunter's Crest build. Case in point, her forward tilt takes from the swings of the Reaper's Crest. This is a slower but more powerful swing that's perfect for shoving foes off. Back air also pulls from this, but it's not exactly a 1-to-1 reference. This one in particular is a great finishing move. Or if you want to set them up for a flurry of attacks, down tilt pops people upwards, allowing Hornet to chain it into something devastating. Let's move on to her smash attacks. Unlike in Hollow Knight, there's only really one learnable skill that is comparable to the Great Slash or the Cyclone Slash, that being the Needle Strike. That said, for those who don't know, in Silksong, depending on what you wear for your crest, your Needle Strike will actually change. We will be pulling from those, at least for the first two. Naturally, the forward smash takes from the Hunter's Crest variant. This has nearly zero vertical knockback, so it's perfect for sending anyone you want across the stage. The up smash takes from the Wanderer's Crest's multiple pokes. Hornet jabs her needle 5 times upwards, locking in anyone who's unfortunate enough to be caught. However, the down smash is where things get a little complicated. The obvious choice was to give it to the Witch's Crest and its parallels to the Cyclone Slash. However, I want to do something a little different. This is Cross Stitch, a skill acquired after defeating Lace's sibling Phantom in the Exhaust Organ. Hornet has a history with parry-like moves, both using them and dealing with them. Cross Stitch would have been a prime candidate for a down special, filling the role of a counterattack like Sora, Marth, or Lucario. However, I'm in the camp that thinks we have way too many of those already. So to spice things up, down smash has Hornet assume the counter stance, but it triggers anyhow, even without contact. However, if she's attacked whilst charging this, she'll actually just execute it early, up to a certain percent. You're not invincible, Hornet. Before moving on to Hornet's grab game, Lace actually just reminded me that she has a good selection of alternate costumes, so let's just look into that real quick. All of them have a theme. Can you guess what it might be? Aside from Hornet's default palette, she also sports a gold and bronze variant reminiscent of Chakra the Warrior Cartographer. Here's a green and tan costume based off of Garmond, complete with a little charm of Zaza on the needle. Can't forget Zaza. Trobio's orange and pink looks good on Hornet, complete with a decorative smoke bomb. Hey, look at News palette. It turns the needle blood red. The Flea Caravan was one of my favorite sets of characters, so this tan appearance is based off of them. Surprise, surprise, Lace also gets a costume based off of her. She's the only one that changes Hornet's mask in a significant way. And finally, the Knight from Hollow Knight, also referred to as the Ghost. The needle is fashioned to look like their nail. Which one's your favorite? I'm partial to the Chakra and Flea Caravan ones myself. And while we're here, let's take a look at Hornet's stage, Bellheart. This is a town in the center of Farloom that was plagued by the Haunting, with its citizens being strung up by the Widow, incapacitated. This stage shows what Bellheart looked like before that. Friendly faces populate the town cheering you on, such as Pavo, Sherma, Chakra, Tip and Pill, Frey the shopkeeper, and even the Bell Beast crawling around in the foreground. Bellheart comes with a bespoke selection of songs from Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight Silksong. Included are Hornet, both the original and a remix, Strive, Incisive Battle, Bell Beast, Lace, Fourth Chorus, Widow, Last Judge, Red Maiden, Trobio, and The Choir. Let's move on to Hornet's grab. She's a sword fighter in practice, so she doesn't have the greatest throw game. That said, that didn't stop me from thinking of some fun references to base them off of. The most interesting part of Hornet's grapple game is actually the grab itself. She utilizes her claw line skill learned in the Citadel. This is actually taken basically as is in Smash, in the air. If she uses her grab while airborne and it connects with someone or something, she rockets towards them. This does not deal knockback and it deals a pitiful amount of damage, but its main use case is actually to recover horizontally. However, while used on the ground, if the harpoon connects, it will work in the same way a normal tether grab does. So something to really consider with her is that if you want to close the gap, you have to think about how you want to approach that with the claw line. A totally viable option is just the short hop, claw line, and then combo that with a quick jab or forward tilt. But the biggest drawback with the aerial claw line is something we'll get into later, as well as the fact that you cannot use your throws. I like to think that there are some pretty fun callbacks to popular parts of Silksong, the clearest of which is her forward throw. Ugh, poor Jigglypuff. If you're looking for spectacle, these really take the cake. She's usually strictly utilitarian, but I wanted to see how much personality we can put into these. If you are familiar with a certain section of the slab, these will seem very obvious. Her up throw has her kick. Without her needle, Hornet relies on her powerful legs to attack. She uses them again with her back throw. Ugh, and I thought Jigglypuff had it bad. That's brutal. Her kick sends directly outward too, so it's especially disgusting, but it almost seems tame compared to her down throw. No, she did not snap Olimar's neck. That's too extreme for our age rating. Let's move on to the specials. Something you may have picked up on are a few flashes when Hornet uses her attacks. This is because of her central mechanic, the Silk Spool. This is a universal resource for Hornet and is utilized in other places, not just for her special attacks. First and foremost, let me show you how it works. Hornet generates Silk whenever she successfully hits an opponent with most of her moves. There are only a few moves that do not add Silk to the spool, but I hope those make sense. Some attacks even get aided by Silk. For instance, Clawline's aerial grapple only works when there's at least one loop in the spool. Otherwise, it just acts as a normal tether as it would for other fighters like Lucas and Samus. Her smash attacks also consume one loop of Silk, however, they don't require it to be used. The attacks deal more damage if there's Silk to be expended, and it's very noticeable when Silk isn't applied. Those attacks only cost 1 of 10 loops in the Silk spool. However, that isn't the only way to make Silk. Hornet's neutral special is Bind. When holding the special button, or if the spool has less than 3 loops, Hornet will stop in her tracks and spin Silk to fill the spool until it's full. Bind also works while airborne, but be careful, if you get hit while in this vulnerable state, your entire spool will drain to 0, forcing a change in approach. Hornet doesn't have the warding bell equipped, so you're completely defenseless. However, what's the use in gathering Silk without being able to expend it? That's why if your spool has at least 3 loops in the tank, you get access to her other neutral special, the Thread Storm. This whole tap and hold system might be reminiscent of a certain fighting game character, where holding the button has Hornet bind, whereas tapping it unleashes a flurry of Silk. This was a difficult attack to avoid in her boss battle, so I'm glad you're able to put it to use here. Like Bind, wherever Hornet is in physical space, she'll stop in her tracks to whip Silk in a circle. This attack also hits multiple times, adding another tool to your combat repertoire. This is where Kirby comes in. He also gets access to the Thread Storm as well as the Silk Spool in general. This functionally works like Inkling. There's no way for him to refill the spool, but he does have access to a really powerful attack that he can use multiple times. Speaking of tools though, we can't forget those. Also translated from her boss battle, and a personal favorite tool of mine, we have the Sting Shard as her down special. The angle of the toss is dictated by how long the button is pressed, so you're able to set it in a wide variety of positions. This also floats in space, acting like a landmine. When enemies come into contact with it, the barb sharpens and shoots out a bunch of pins. That said, there's a hard limit of 2 Sting Shards able to be present on screen at a given time. In addition, this is also a physical object, so you're able to pogo off of it with your dive attack. If you're under the stage, a strategy would be to throw the Sting Shard upward, jump, dive, and then jump again. If it's not already obvious, Hornet doesn't have the greatest recovery. Her jumps are decently high, and she has access to a float with the Fade Down Cloak, as well as the Cling Grip allowing her to wall jump, but it looks like she doesn't have a quick means of gaining vertical distance. And I stand by it, up special's Cogfly. What about the Silksong, you might be asking? Initially, I thought it to be a slam dunk for an easy recovery, but upon reflection, I think Hornet has more than enough options to effectively make it back to the stage. It'll be tricky to recover from below, but a skilled enough player will make it work. Cogfly is at least a little bit more interesting. It employs similar principles to the Pikmin. They act autonomously and attack the nearest enemy. Like the Sting Shard, you can only have a few of them on screen at once, but that doesn't change the fact that they can be a nuisance. That said, they do drop like flies at the slightest attack. They are very frail, and it takes a while for the Cogflies to get wound back up. These tools do not consume Silk, nor do they generate it in any capacity. So in exchange for some area control, you have to forego replenishing Silk through combat. Now, with all this talk talk of tools, we haven't even touched on side special. This is another skill that requires Silk to be used, but the Silk Spear was too good not to pass up. Silk Spear, surprise surprise, makes Hornet stop in her tracks to fling the needle forward enveloped in silk. This goes quite a ways away and is shot pretty fast with very little windup or end lag. This also consumes 3 silk, and if you don't have the required amount, well, better get some more silk. That should about cover it for all of Hornet's attacks. But if you somehow get one of these, you'll be able to unleash your final smash, Silk Steel. This is lifted from Act 3 of Silksong, where Hornet goes and claims the hearts of 4 mighty warriors of Farloom. After besting them in combat, Hornet goes to steal their hearts. She does the same here, and after ensnaring the foe, she gets a free full refill of silk as well. Hornet is a nimble fighter with an aggressive playstyle accompanied by her varied arsenal of ravenous close-range swipes and hostile projectiles. Perfect for the Hunter Princess of Hollow Nest. And honestly, I just think that's neat. Thank you for tuning into this showcase. Oh hey, a package.